Henry J., do you have any memories or stories of the times of segregation and Jim Crow laws when you were a young lad growing up in the Carolinas? Thanks.
Well, yeah, it was 19. This is a whole nother podcast. Growing up, I mean, I grew up in, they call it the Jim Crow South. And I still remember, say you go to the bus station in town, it had a water fountain and it would say white and it would say colored. The bathrooms would say the same thing, white, colored. See, today you can't even fathom that happening. But black people were not allowed to go into white restaurants, white bars. The schools were segregated till maybe 1966, maybe. It was after Kennedy got killed and Johnson, he enacted the Equal Rights Amendment.
I think maybe 64, if we're going to put a year on it, about that. Because Kennedy died in 63.
In 63. I remember the day. But every American alive on November the 22nd, I think that's the date, 1963. If you were alive in the United States, you remember it. It was one of those moments that is called of national importance. Everything stopped. I do remember I think I was in the 7th grade, I think. And we had a announcement come over the PA system, and school was getting out. It was like 2:00 in the afternoon, 2:30, maybe a little more. And the announcer told us that President John Kennedy had been killed. Well, we didn't know any news. This was before CNN, and this was before all the news channels. You had ABC, NBC, and CBS. That's it. So I remember the day well, and what was the actual question?
I might actually add something to it then. We were talking about Jim Crow laws growing up in Jim Crow South and everything, and I suppose I'll bring it back to wrestling. I suppose it's a wrestling podcast. What were the audiences like in the South in the early 70s? I know the desegregation was in force in the early 70s when you started, but did like black people and white people generally still separate?
Oh yeah. It was accepted. Now, whether it was black people, they probably didn't like it, but they didn't make any big protests about it because the people weren't woke in those days. And thinking back on it now, I mean, it was what it was. So trying to fight it, whether I liked it or not. Now, Atlanta, Georgia, when I started, this was in the 70s, was still segregated. The City Auditorium in Atlanta, Georgia, a town with a predominantly black population, was still segregated on Friday nights between the top balcony and the bottom. And the black people went up top, and the white people stayed on the bottom. Same way in Memphis, in the old Ellis Auditorium. They would go up top. And one guy to break that racial barrier between the whites and the black in Memphis was Sputnik Monroe. Sputnik Monroe, he did a couple of interviews. He said, "Hey, I'm not going to work here no more if you keep making the black people, go upstairs." And they loved him. That even as a heel, white people would boo the crap out of Sputnik, but the black people would cheer him. because he was their hero, whether he realized that or not. But he became their hero. And I was just reading this the other day. Sputnik Monroe was arrested in Memphis for merely going into what they call a Negro cafe. That was the headlines. And he got a lawyer, a black lawyer, because they kicked it out. I mean, and he said he was just talking in there to his friends, and they brought up his civil rights, and they let it go. But he was arrested just for sitting in a black-owned restaurant in Memphis. Yeah, so Jim Crow was an established fact down south in the 60s, 70s, and lingering on into the 80s and 90s, and probably still lingers on today in some respects.
Now, I've got a word in my mind. You tell me if it was right or wrong. Was the word mopery that Sputnik Monroe was charged with?
I think it was, now that you mention it. And I don't know what mopery means, but I do remember the word. What's it mean?
I remember hearing it from many years ago, and I can't find out. I can't find any other mention of it. But hopefully it's mopery, because it's an amazing word. Either way,
mopery, I think, is just hanging around, moping around. See what I mean?
Yeah,
doing nothing. But the thought is moping around, probably conjuring up evil things to come. Moping around.